Hello and welcome. Say what you will about Chinese cars, but if there's one thing that Chinese car companies do well, it's names. And nobody does names like the people at Great Wall Motor and their sub-brands. They're the ones that brought us cars like the Aura Lightning Cat and the Funky Cat GT, as well as the legendary Haval Big Dog. Well, guess what? They've outdone themselves once again. Meet the Haval Cool Dog. But the question remains, is it cool, dog?
With hands-on test drives and reviews of exciting Chinese market vehicles, Wheelsboy is the #1 source for China auto insights. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook.
The Cool Dog definitely bears a striking resemblance to the Big Dog, but is smaller in nearly every dimension, which makes sense, actually, considering the names. Think of this as the sleeker interpretation of the dog styling language, the Bronco Sport to the Big Dog's Bronco. Now, this car only has four-wheel drive available on the highest of its 4 trim levels, but that hasn't stopped the scamps over at Haval from giving it a design language that would make you think it's much more capable than it actually is. Take, for example, the big chunky fenders. There's also the bumper here that's finished to look like metal, but definitely isn't. Speaking of metal, there's the metal skid plate down here that's also not metal and doesn't extend far enough under the car to protect you from anything. The daytime running lights of the Cool Dog have a very cool kind of gun sight design. It looks great and it reminds me a great deal of what we saw in the SL03 electric sedan that we drove. That design, by the way, it's repeated in the taillights. The belt line on this car is incredibly high, especially here after the C-pillar, leading to a greenhouse that has the area of, say, 3 postage stamps. But where form over function reaches soaring new heights is here on the rear. The main character in this story is the lump, which, first of all, has scared the taillights all the way to the edge of the design and eaten up most of the rear window. Please believe me when I say that rear visibility is seriously at a premium. But with this big of a thing, there must be some function to it. Maybe it's a spare tire holder or, I don't know, some sort of cool cubby. Well, you can't open it from out here, so let's pop open the rear door and see what's what. I really can't wait to see. No, it's a lump. It's just a lump. The rear tire, as it turns out, is here. Underneath the floor. Rear cargo space behind the rear seats, 493 liters. Not especially impressive for this class. The interior of this car has some very interesting part sharing going on with another Great Wall Motor product. But it's not the Big Dog. Before we get to that, however, I have to share some very sad news. While the Big Dog really committed to the bit by having trim levels with names like Belgian Malamute and Husky, the Cool Dog has no such sense of humor. The trim levels are so boring that I'm not even going to bother to translate them. I will tell you, however, that they cost between $16,500 US and $20,000. But back to what I was saying before, this thing has some interesting part sharing going on with another Great Wall Motor product. The Tank 300. They have the exact same shift lever, this really interesting kind of HR Giger-esque thing, and the same twin 12.3-inch LCD displays. That's a little awkward, however, because the Tank 300 and the entire Tank brand are positioned as Great Wall Motors' kind of premium off-road brand, whereas Haval is the more affordable brand. But that's not the only premium feature you'll find inside of this car. This is the first Chinese car to ever feature a JVC sound system, an 18-speaker one to be exact, and it's available on 3 out of 4 trim levels. I have to say, this is probably the best sound system I've ever heard in a car in this price category. The bass, especially, is really good. Kendrick Lamar was basically giving me a back massage on the way here, thanks to the speaker that's embedded in the seat. On the steering wheel, we'll find the same button design that we found on the Big Dog. Very Land Rover inspired, this one, clearly. In the center console, you've got a wireless charging pad. Note I said a wireless charging pad, not 2. Only the left will charge your phone. This one, well, it's just kind of a place to put your phone. In terms of physical buttons, there's not much to be found. There's only the mode knob here, and then your start-stop button. These buttons down here below the screen are not physical, but they do allow you, through touch capacitive, to control your AC functions. Let's talk a little bit about the 12.3-inch center screen. Response times are quite good. It doesn't have a big high-powered chip or anything, but it's fast enough that it won't bother you in daily use. It also has all the functions that you would want, streaming music and videos. But there's one little thing that I noticed that I really liked. If you go into the options of the car, go down to the exterior options, and then you go to the windshield wipers. This is where you adjust the length of the spray that you get from the windshield washer fluid. There's a little cartoon of a little cool dog being sprayed. Kind of adorable. In terms of storage options, you have this big area underneath the center console. You also have a quite sizable glove compartment here. On the center console top itself, you have, well, the nice little place to put your cell phone there, as well as another one on the side, and a bi-level cup holder area. Just pop that out, put an even bigger bottle in. Speaking of bi-level, so's a center console cubby right there. Rear seat passengers get to enjoy the same incredible two-tone seats that you have in the front, this great black and yellow look. You do, however, have to make do with only black seat belts instead of the very cool green ones in the front. Now that I look at it, however, I don't know if this yellow quite matches with the exterior green. That JVC sound system that I mentioned before has speakers embedded into the headrests. Now, the second row doesn't get to enjoy those, but they do get to look at them here, and I gotta say, this is probably the coolest design I've ever seen for a speaker embedded in a headrest. Full points, however, for this giant sunroof, which opens all the way to here. You also have two USB ports, traditional Type A, down here. Always good to see two instead of just one, and no center armrest. All versions of the Cool Dog come with a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission and a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, but there are two different power levels available. The first makes 110 kilowatts and 218 newton-meters of torque, while the more powerful version makes 135 kilowatts and 275 newton-meters. God, that belt line is so high. I feel like it starts at my neck. The cowl, by the way, is also really, really high. I have to say this thing probably has the worst visibility of any car in this segment. But anyways, this is the top spec version, which means it has 135 kilowatts. I've never driven the 110 kilowatt hour version, but I can tell you this 135 doesn't exactly have hair-raising levels of performance. Thankfully, though, that 275 newton-meters of torque is available from just 1,500 RPM, so it's at least fast enough to get out of its own way. The 7-speed DCT transmission, well, it's a willing accomplice when it comes to your daily commute. It's pretty much invisible most of the time, except for the very occasional hiccup when you're trying to take off from a stoplight. And a commuter is exactly what this car is. This thing, as I mentioned, only has 4-wheel drive on the highest of its 4 trim levels. The other 3 trims are all front-wheel drive. It also has the same ground clearance as a Honda CR-V, so I imagine it has the same capabilities off-road as an all-wheel drive Honda CR-V. It doesn't, however, have the same handling characteristics of a Honda CR-V. Now, that thing's not a sports car, but this thing, wow. It sways quite a bit when you throw it into the corners. The steering feel, well, not exactly great either. Let's just say that this car's highlights do not include its driving experience. But while the driving experience isn't going to leave you impressed, it's also not bad enough to take away from the other highlights of this car, that exterior styling, the interior styling, and the suite of features, which includes, by the way, adaptive cruise control on all trim levels. The Cool Dog is definitely a vehicle that has a lot more show than go. It reminds me a great deal, in fact, of the Haval Big Dog. I'll have the same conclusion I had for that car then. In a world where you seemingly have to pick between jelly bean-shaped soft rotors and very cool-looking but often over-capable off-roaders, why not pick a car that takes the good looks from this category and the comfort from that category? After all, this is life, and it's full of compromises. All right, that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check us out on all of our social media and our website. And as always, like, subscribe, and hit the bell.